All right. Rock and roll. Welcome to the Scorched Earth podcast for Sunday, January 26, 2025. And I want to start out with kind of some improvements I need to make, some mea culpas. There's going to be a lot going on tonight. You know, like we're all looking for truth. Sometimes your truth comes to you in different ways. And I was really taken by one of the comments, and like Superstar Stacy, the producer of this show, says, please subscribe, leave comments. It makes the show better. We don't have advertising. We don't have paywalls. We don't have anything. We just want the best podcast possible. And I got a comment today, and I looked at it, and there was so much truth in it. And it was by a Republican who listens to this podcast. And he said, you know what you need to do, or he would like, is to attribute some of your facts that you bring up during the course of your podcast and tell us where they're coming from. And he is absolutely unequivocally right. You know, I used to be on the debate team in high school and college, and you know, a fact is only as good as its source. And one of the laments I have about the right, and they probably have it about the left too, is you're bringing up facts and you're not telling anybody where they come from. You know, we don't want these things to all of a sudden be J-facts, and it's going to be the bullshit podcast. And, you know, we're all just going to live in this utopian, surreal world where we just tell each other lies. You know, at the end of the day, this country, Republican, Democrat, a mixture of both, whatever, we have to find truth. And I know that on the liberal side, we're always lamenting that the Republicans don't tell the truth, they distort things. Well, you know, maybe I do believe that is true on a number of occasions, but it's kind of like the fact I put out last night that, and two things can be true simultaneously, and I think really the political conversation needs to have that, is Obama had more deportations than Trump. Yeah, that's true. On the numbers. That's a New York Times number. But also, Obama was there for 8 years and Trump was only there for 4. So there is truth on both sides of the cauldron. But what I'm going to say is, I do a lot of research for this show. I use multiple sources to validate what it is. I'm not using The Onion. I'm not using wacky left progressive. I'm using the mainstream media. I don't want to hear that the mainstream media is biased or whatever. Look, at the end of the day, you can say that. I respect that. But they fact check. This isn't like Fox News in 2020 when they talked about the Simtech and the Diebold voting machines, and they kept pushing that. And next thing you know, they had to pay almost $1 billion in libel damage. And for everybody out there, when's the last time you saw a libel award that huge? And let's make something unequivocally clear. Simtech still has ongoing litigation against Fox News. And every time you hear Fox News, and I see Fox News every morning because I want to hear all the perspectives. Every time Fox News talks about the 2020 election, they can't run that banner across the bottom quick enough that says Joe Biden was lawfully elected president. Okay? Newsmax is going to have a problem. They're going back to court. News Nation, all them. I don't care. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to do that. But what I am going to do, and like I said, I used to debate. It was all facts. It was all this. It was all that. What I'm going to do is when I come into a story, I usually have 3 or 4 sources. What I'm going to do is give you basically the preeminent sourcing for that story. If I have another quote from another publication, I will attribute it to it. I want you to be informed, and I want you to have an understanding of where these things are coming from. Let's be honest. If every quote I give you is from MSNBC, you're going to go, well, okay, I for the liberal part of my audience, you're going to say, well, I trust it, but other people are going to be rather skeptical. Look, here's how I see the news media. You got Fox on the right, you got MSNBC on the left. They're polar opposites, okay? Honestly, in the middle, I think CNN does the best job I've seen of keeping it fair. I see John Bolton doing commentary on there. I see conservatives doing commentary on there. I like Meet the Press. They usually on their roundtable have two very conservative people along with two very liberal. And I personally like that. And also alluding to what the comment was today, I will, down the road here, try and bring on responsible Republican voices. I want to hear the debate. But I'm not going to, at this juncture, get into the minutia of fact-checking everything I tell you. Honestly, sincerely, if you believe me, you do. If you don't, you don't. I get it. You got to just click out. I get it. But I'm going to try and make the most honest cast that also kind of flows. I don't want to be muddled up in, oh, this fact, that fact. You know, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. No. I mean, I'm going to do the best I can. And look, I've called out Biden in the last week. I've talked about how corrupt I think his preemptive pardons were. You know, and a lot of the scuzzy stuff that they were doing at the end. I mean, okay, was it criminal? No, I don't think it was criminal, but I thought it was corrupt. And a lot of the things that maybe, and we're going to talk about the inspector generals a little later in this podcast, but as we go on to some of the other things, there's corrupt and there's criminal. You know, I think the inspectors with inspector generals for Trump, that's going to be a criminal thing. Now the mea culpa for me. The 2020 pandemic was an incredibly harrowing time in America. We lost. You see different accounts. I'm going to go with the New York Times account of, I've seen accounts up to 1.5 million Americans lost their life due to COVID. The New York Times puts it somewhere around 900,000. Let's just settle on that. I'm just going to go with the New York Times number of 900,000. I'm not going to go into the weeds. I'm not going to try and overblow it. COVID was, from my perspective, and I think a lot of Americans, was ignored by Trump, especially in the first 4 months. He kept saying it would go away. It was just like a flu. It was a severe case of the flu. We found out later that he knew in January of that year how deadly it was in his conversations on the record with Bob Woodward. That comes from the Washington Post and Bob's book. That, and I've heard the recordings, actual recordings, not some YouTube AI generated thing. I've heard Bob on different seminars, on different panels, play it. I've seen it. I've heard it. Okay. Trump knew how deadly it was, but he thought that it was the only way he was going to stop being reelected. And to me, that really, at the core of it, shows what Trump thinks of the American people. He thinks they are weak, he thinks they are stupid, and he thinks that they can't comprehend big picture ideas, that only he can. And the example I'm going to give you is in World War II, back before the media became legacy media, bigger, but there was still media. And we were attacked at Pearl Harbor. Granted, the oil embargo of Japan the year before probably precipitated it, but we're not going to get into the weeds on that today. And on that harrowing day, we were attacked by Japan. We were thrust into World War II against Germany, against Japan, a war on two fronts, which most historians will tell you is almost an impossible feat. And we were up against it. I mean, Germany was just rolling through Europe. They took over France in 2 days. How do you take over a country in 2 days? I mean, I can't even believe you could get the tanks across it back then. But okay, they took the country in 2 days. Japan was a monster. I mean, they basically dominated into submission China and the whole Indochina area, all the countries, Nobody would talk to him. Nobody would even raise a finger against him. And it was formidable. I mean, we were attacked. The princess got attacked. The princess got told they weren't cool. And there was a new kid in town. And so what did Franklin Delano Roosevelt do? He had what they called the fireside chat. And on Saturday afternoon or evening, depending on where in the United States you were, the only medium was, because television didn't exist, was going on the radio. And he would sit there and tell Americans, this is a tough battle. We are up against it. He didn't sugarcoat it. He literally laid it out in the barest of terms, kind of like Churchill did in London. We had leaders back then who believed in the faith of their people, who believed in the character of their people, that they could handle tough times. They would buckle up their britches and go, okay, we're in this together. Kind of like we all came together after 9/11, right? 9/11 was just a tragic, tragic day. And I will say this, I am no George Bush fan, but he did an amazing job of getting the country to come together. Now, granted, what did he do with that power? He went into Iraq for an illegal war. I mean, we're still looking for those weapons of mass destruction. They strung out Colin Powell. You know, they treated him like a prostitute, and then they cut the ties with him. You know, Dick Cheney, I don't really care if he endorsed Kamala Harris. That dude is the evil emperor from Star Wars, Palpatine. That dude is evil on evil. I don't care. I may like some of the things his daughter does, but that dude, nah, sorry. That guy's in the top 10 people I hate. And literally, I would say I hate him more than Trump. And the reason is because he was smart. He is what I am afraid of Trump 2 becoming. Who, not this Trump, because he's, honestly, I don't think he has the intellectual capacity to get there. But what I am afraid of is down the road, we get a really savvy, a really smart Republican who is evil like Dick Cheney. And then we got our work cut out for him. Nixon kind of had that. Nixon was an incredibly calculating, manipulative, smart guy. He rigged an election, or he rigged it so he went against the opponent he wanted to. How about we put that? Let's be truthful on the podcast. And, you know, so let me get back to my point as I just delve into the Watergate papers. The Chinese lab back in 2020, there was 2 stories that were going around. And basically it came out of a wet market in China. And then there was the other, and I will say the Republican side, that said, nope, it was bioengineered. It came out of a lab, you know, in Wuhan. And Fauci, in that year, kind of dismissed that it came out of a lab. He said that, according to Politico, that there was no evidence to indicate it. First of all, we have the ability and the gift of hindsight. We can look back at things now 4 years later and know a little more truth than we did then. You have to realize what Fauci went through back then. He was dealing with a pandemic that we hadn't seen in 100 years, since the Spanish flu in 1918. And he wanted to make people safe. He's been a public health official for 40 plus years. The man has dedicated his life to helping people live longer and healthier. He has. The man has. The man, I would put him up there with Jonas Salk. I mean, that guy is all about the American people. And I think a lot of his statements, now this isn't to give him a pass, I think a lot of his statements were made with not having proper information. You don't know what you don't know. And also, there is a political repercussion. I mean, you know, Trump has the ability to say, you know, the Kung flu and all those other things, but a more respected and entrenched member of our society in terms of health awareness has to be a little more careful with their language. And I think that's what happened, and I think that's probably why he didn't come out. But he obviously couldn't come out because he obviously doesn't have national intelligence. He's just dealing with public health safety. I mean, let's keep the guy in his lane. You know, Trump has 50 different people who can give him information at any time. Fauci didn't have that. Fauci was only dealing with what was going on the ground with the public health crisis. So this week, the CIA came out and said that they believe, from the preponderance of evidence that they have reevaluated, that the COVID did come out of the lab in Wuhan. Now, this all started in the last month of the Biden administration. In the end of December, Biden ordered another review by the CIA of where it came from. And this was their conclusion, came out this week. They now fall in line with the FBI and the Energy Department. Now, I don't know why the Energy Department is making a declaration of where that flu came from. I mean, I don't know. But as of this moment, the State Department hasn't made a declaration of it. I think at the end of the day, most reasonable people will say it probably came out of that lab. I've been told that lab doesn't exist anymore. I don't know if that's true. I'm not going to put my reputation, because, it's impeccable, on the line about that. But to me, the way China operates, it makes a lot of sense. It really does. At the end of the day, we're not going to know if it was a bioweapon or if it was an accidental discharge. I hope it was an accidental thing that happened, but I will say this, that it is amazing how quickly it infected the entire world. And I understand air travel is a big thing, but I sure hope it wasn't a bioweapon, but we're going to move on from that. Now, here's the story I talked about yesterday that I really started digging deeper in today. And this was a story, I didn't attribute any sources yesterday, but it came from Politico. And it was 2 military jets sent from the United States, I didn't see a place of origin, to return illegal aliens back to Mexico. And I have never thought about this, and I have never heard about this on any platform, anywhere in the political world of, we've heard for the last 4 years, we're just going to ship them all back. We're going to ship all these illegal aliens back. Yeah? Okay. And we've all heard that argument. But you know what Mexico did yesterday that was just utterly amazing? And I don't understand how come nobody thought of it. What if they just said no? Like, no, you can't land here. You can't. That plane can't land here. Like, wow. Now what do we do? So we had to take them another 2,000 miles to Guatemala and release them at a military air base. We have a military base there. We don't have any military bases in Mexico. So now I'm thinking to myself, how do we take the Mexican illegal aliens here back? Because if you understand the way the country does, and I know everybody out there does infinitely probably better than I do, is there's points of entry, right? So if I go to Mexico, there's actually Mexican officials there who let me in. Conversely, when I come back, there's American officials who let me back in. I have to have proper documentation. I have to have proper ID. I have to have proper status to get back in the U.S. But what if Mexico said, no, you can't come in here? Now, see, that's something we've never thought of. We as Americans think, we can go over there party, we can get our freak on and we can come back. Okay, we only have to worry about the U.S. side. What happens if they have buses and buses full of illegal aliens? They go to the border and the Mexican police, federales, whatever you want to call it, National Guard, the troops say, no, that's it. No, we're not coming in. And I thought to myself, How come I have never heard of that? And I'm going to tell you something. I was looking around today. I haven't even seen anything about this. To me, it's a story that really is falling underneath the cracks. And I'm thinking, it's kind of like me dating Scarlett Johansson. Like, I'm all in on the relationship, but you know what? She's like, no. That's probably why she got the restraining order against me, Mostly the fact she doesn't even know me. But, I can't understand why she would rebuff my overtures of a relationship with her. It's kind of like, Mexico rebuffing our efforts to export all the illegal aliens back to their country. It's kind of like, Scarlett, you were married to Ryan Reynolds. You're married to Colin Jost, and you want nothing to do with JT. That's weird. Ladies obviously got good eyesight. All right. So we went through the COVID. Let's talk about Fauci for a second here. On Friday night, there was 4 that I'm made aware of, and this comes out of the BBC. Anthony Fauci, John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, and former envoy Brian Hook were all relieved of their security detail that the United States government was providing. Now, Trump, in a quote, said that they've all made enough money they can afford their own security. And to me, I was thinking, well, when you leave office in 4 years, is that going to be the same for you? I mean, you've made incredible amounts of money being president, Hotel Trump in Washington, D.C., one example, only one, crypto from Solano. And I was thinking to myself, well, they still, and this is according to the BBC, they're not going to really get into the weeds too much because I don't think they really want to publicize it. All 4 of these individuals are still getting threats from Iran. Now, I got to be honest with you. I looked for 3 or 4 different sources. I don't understand why Iran has threats against Fauci, but maybe those are homegrown threats. To me, that makes a lot more sense. People still angry about the whole COVID mask, isolation, vaccination thing. I would think he's probably the symbol of their anger and their angst. Mike Pompeo, I guess I can see where a foreign country wants to take him out. What happens if that country actually does whack one of these guys? I mean, I don't know. I just think I guess Trump is just, this is the thing. We're going to cut cost. We're going to do that. But you know what? In 4 years, I want you to say, Mr. President, that you're going to turn down your Secret Service detail, and that for your wife and your kids and your family because you made enough money. Because if that's the bottom line, that's the bottom line. Another little tidbit from the news. This is from CNN. Trump fired 12 inspector generals, let me start speaking English. He fired the inspector generals from more than a dozen agencies, and now Trump is going to install his own inspector generals. Now, this is a problem he had in the first go-round. He fired one of his lead inspector generals, Michael Atkinson, who brought the whistleblower and assorted other witnesses, namely Ukrainian Ambassador Maria Yannatonovich and successor Bill Taylor, to Congress to talk about Trump trying to get the Ukrainians and especially Zelensky to dig up dirt on Hunter Biden and Joe Biden that he could use in the election. It led to his first impeachment, not his removal. But Trump has had a lot of problems with inspector generals. There was an inspector general in his first term, and I apologize for not having the name, but he was sniffing around about the Secret Service being housed at the Turnberry Golf Course that he owns in the United Kingdom, and that he thought that they were staying there at above market rates versus other locales. And he was fired too. It does seem like if you come in between Trump and his ability to make money, that you don't really have a lot of job safety and security. I'm going to bring a quote up, and this is really a good quote. It's by Della Ferreira, who is, for all you don't know, and was including myself before today, the chairman of the International Transparency Agency. Not sure what that is. That might be an internet thing, but it's a great quote. People's indifference is the best breeding ground for corruption to grow. And boy, I can't think out anything that's more and more true. And finally, this one really hits close to home for me. And this is from Axios, most of the reporting here. But Trump today, Saturday, called to clean out Gaza and move the Palestinians to Egypt and Jordan. Now that we've come to a ceasefire, let's call it what it is. Gaza is like the Bronx in 1980. I went to New York for a debate tournament in the 80s. And the debate tournament was in Manhattan. And for some reason, I don't know, we were just young and dumb. We took a ride over to Brooklyn, and then we ended up in the Bronx. And I remember back then, it literally looked like Germany after World War II. I mean, there was burned out cars on the street. There was lots full of trash. I mean, it literally looked like a war zone. I know it sounds like an exaggeration because now there's so much money and there's so much gentrification and just, I don't know. I guess it's just the money. Everything looks so much better. And that's what Gaza is. Gaza has literally been leveled. Those people, their houses have been destroyed. I mean, it's really like in Los Angeles, the Palisades fire and the Altadena fire. There's nothing left. It's just scorched earth, just like your favorite podcast. And make sure you hit that subscribe button. So he says it's time to clean out and let's move them to new places. All right. Now, unfortunately for Trump, this move is opposed by both Egypt and Jordan. There's 1.5 million people currently in Gaza, most of them homeless, most of them without food. Trump says it's a mess. And do people really want to be forced to leave? I mean, at the end of the day, home is home, right? I mean, for the people like, let's say here in Los Angeles, they lost their home, okay? They don't have anything. They're going to get a settlement. What do you want? Do you want to rebuild where you've lived your entire life? Or do you want to take the cash and do you want to move to Arkansas? I've been to Arkansas. Trust me, nobody's making that move. To me, this seems like a behind-the-scenes thing where Israel is making a power grab, just like they do every year or two about the West Bank. You know, we're just going to take our tanks, we're going to take our steamrollers, and we're just going to push the fence out, and then we're going to make a new fence, and hey, we just gained another 200 yards. You know, that's what Israel always does. And they're just corrupt and they're evil because they have the biggest and baddest military in the Middle East. This is the quote from Trump today. It is literally a demolition site. Almost everything is demolished and people are dying there. It's funny, but this past week, if people are dying there, shouldn't Trump have issued an executive order to increase humanitarian aid? You know, if it's a problem and you've noticed it, maybe you can do something to solve it. So this is continuing the quote. So I would like Arab nations to offer a different location where maybe they can live in peace. Yeah. So Egypt has come out and said that the transfer of Palestinians, remember it's 1.5 million people from Gaza to its territory, is a threat to its national security. And this is something I want everybody to remember. And this is really, really important. Isn't this what Trump has said about Mexicans coming in to a new place, that they are a threat to our security? Look, that's what Egypt's saying. You want to take the Palestinians and put them all in our land? Well, that's a threat to our security. Of course it is. Trump says that people who willingly, not forced, willingly come to America are a threat to our national security. So which one do you want, Don? Felon Don. Is it a threat to security or is it not? You can't have it both ways. You can't tell the Egyptians that the Gazans are no threat to you. They're no security threat whatsoever. But in America, when willingly people from Mexico come here, it's a threat to our security. And you've been saying that for 4 years. You sabotaged the immigration bill a year ago just because of that. Peace to the Palestinians. I love you. And the poll numbers by Reuters that literally 50% of the Palestinian Muslim population in the 3 swing states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania voted for Trump. Be careful what you vote for. You just might get it. All right. Hit that subscribe button. And please leave some comments. All right. Peace out.